Hello, thank you for joining us with our Tea Talks. Again, we're working with the Coalition of Hamilton Indigenous Leadership, which is CHIL in the Hamilton area. And we've worked together on this special project, realizing the importance of bringing our community members together and sharing their stories. And just that whole idea of a lot of times the old grandmas or aunties would sit around having tea and discussing stories. And that's our oral tradition. That's our original way. And that's how we did things and communicate to each other. So I'm very blessed today and very grateful to have two very unique people with me in the sense that I feel like I've mentored under them. I know Marilyn has said that she felt she learned from me, but I really have learned a lot from them. And again, the importance of getting our history recorded and telling our stories. And that's what this session is all about. So we call it Tea Talks. So on my one side here, I have Marilyn Wright. And we'll start with Marilyn.
My name is Marilyn Wright, and I'm a member of the Six Nations of the Grand. My family is Delaware, and I'm a grandma. I'm recently retired from the Aboriginal Health Center, where I was the FASD Child Nutrition Coordinator, and I'm so happy to be part of the Indigenous community for the city of Hamilton.
And on my other side, I have Fred Loft.
My name is Fred Loft. I am Turtle Clan of Mohawk of the Haudenosaunee people on the Six Nations territory.
Again, both respect these two very much. And but we're going to start with Marilyn. Being the female, we'll start with Marilyn. If you could just say a few words about yourself, and then we'll go over to Fred. We'll introduce Fred, and then we'll get into our talk. Okay, are you good with that?
Yes, I'm fine.
Okay.
Thank you for inviting me and including me in your adventure here. As you get older, there's so many things in your head that you want to relay to people, and someone will say something and renew that memory and think, oh yeah, I remember that, I participated in that. So it makes you regret all through your life, that you experienced something and you regret not writing it down, not cataloging it, and so that at some point in your time when you have the occasion to participate in an event like this, that you wouldn't have to think so hard about things that happened during your lifetime. Some things are very prominent, they're very important that happened in your lives, but there's little things that participating in a meeting where someone made a revelation or someone did something that was outstanding and you didn't document it,
Missed
so
moments?
but
like missed moments?
Okay. Missed moments and things that really meant a lot to you and to the other people who were with you at the time. Mm-hmm. So I'm Marilyn. My mother was a monteur, and we've, for the most part, lived in Hamilton. For 3 years, I lived in Thunder Bay. I worked for a trade labor union, but my problem was it was so far from home. Hamilton being my home, and I had 2 kids, and they didn't want to go to Thunder Bay with me. My son, he did come and live with me for a while, but people in Thunder Bay are amazing people, but it's
Different world?
a different world. Everyone grows up together, they go to school together, they socialize together, they go to camp every summer together. So an outsider like myself coming in has a hard time fitting in, and I've talked to people who have lived abroad or lived outside their home community for years, and they talk about it could take 10 years before you feel like you belong to the community that you've lived in. So that was my problem. So I came back to Hamilton, and I quit my job and came back to Hamilton, and I was thinking, well, what am I going to do now with myself? So I decided, well, I went to the Indian Center because I'd always been interested in my blood, who my blood people were, and I went to the Indian Center and had an amazing experience with a lady named Loft.
Oh, okay.
She was the traditional person there, and I got to spend a couple weeks with her because I had told her that I was thinking about going back to school and learning about my culture and that, and she just took me under her wing. She took me to every meeting that she had, every place that she had to go on her schedule during that time, and I got to find out, what it was like associating and meeting and talking to people who shared the same blood that you did. So I did. I went to Mohawk College and took the Native Community Care Counseling and Development course in Brantford, and decided that I loved exploring my heritage, and I love learning about things that were important to my community, and to get to know my community. So that was my journey to where I am today.
That's the beginning. Your beginning
Yeah,
story.
that's
Believe
my
me.
rebirthing.
Yeah. You have a lot to offer,
Yes.
as in that story. But I'm just going to stop you for a sec
No,
there.
that's
I'm going to
great.
pass it on to our friend Fred here. And you said Lee?
Her name was Lee Stats.
Lee
when
Stats, okay.
when I first
Okay.
Which
met
is a
her.
Loft now.
I thought okay. I thought there was a connection. Is this the same Lee?
It's
Yeah.
the same
Oh my
Lee.
goodness. Okay, so this
It's
is
the
perfect.
same
For any
Lee.
of you watching, this is perfect because Lee has now become a part of Fred's family. But I'd like Fred just to give a little introduction about how you came into the community.
I was always involved in my community, but not as a community member,
Okay.
I would put it. Where I grew up, we had a mixture of, I'll say a diverse neighborhood. We had Italians, Portuguese, we had Native people, we had people of color, we had Chinese, we had...
Were you in the North End?
Yes, I was.
Totally relate.
Lived there for a long time. Went to school with these individuals, played with these individuals, got hurt by these individuals. It was something that you, I guess, could say was friendship. Because even if they hurt you, the next 2 days later you
You're
were...
still friends. Yeah.
But I went to Hess Street School, and they tried to tell in school, they were teaching us of how being so-called Indian and what my culture and what my traditions were. And I was saying to myself, I better check this out. So I went and checked it all out, and they were, the teachers were telling us about the Bering Strait and how people came across there and came down into Canada and
Yes.
populated
We were
North
supposed to have
America.
traveled across from Asia, right?
Right.
Across the Bering Strait. Oh, yes, the land bridge.
The other one, once I looked into it, they said that it was the Spanish people who came across, brought people from different countries, and they moved up through North America. When I talked to my elders and I talked to my other friends, they said, no, we were always here.
Yeah.
It's the other way around. We expanded. The earth moves in different ways. The earth being Turtle Island, as we call it, separated because water creates its own way, separated the earth. So I could look at all three, and I look at the Turtle Island bit, and it was once shown to me on TV, geographically, that if you take all the pieces of the different countries, put them all back together, they form almost the shape of a turtle.
Oh, wow.
And so I got to thinking, you know, like, well, I can take and find out more by going to high school. Went to high school, didn't work. Sorry, I was out of grade 9 by 4 months. I was out, and then I started working at different places that would hire me, and eventually got into truck driving, and through truck driving learned many things around Ontario from different territories that I stopped into. And some of them were Mohawk, some of them were Ojibwe. A lot of them, in fact, were Ojibwe because I did a lot of driving up north. And from then on, it's been a steady climb. It was a steady climb to where I am now. Mm-hmm. So it was, to me, it was a learning, my life was a learning experience more than I could learn in high school. Mm-hmm. Or in university. What they were teaching me there was their version of what they wanted me to hear.
Yes.
And that's not my version of
what you know.
Right. I mean, we have so many elders out there who are willing to tell their stories to get us our young people back into the stream of not only being Indigenous, but also being in a colonized world, I'll put it. But getting back to the fact that my father had to move to the city with my mother to get away from the fact that his children that he had at the time would have to go to the mushroom or to day school. Yeah. And so he brought us into the city. I was born in the city. My younger siblings, they were all born in the city. My 2 older brothers were born
so you figured just raise you in the city then, eh?
Right, so here I am, raised in the city, raised in a neighborhood that was multicultural, and had many friends from everywhere. Yeah. So I learned quickly that you don't say certain words about certain people, and you get along great, right? So I'll stop there if you don't mind.
Okay, that's good because I can relate. I do relate. That's why I kind of chimed in. I said North End, right? Because I too grew up in the North End. And in fact, my partner is half Italian, half Irish, right? And I remember saying that to my father. If you wanted me to be with an Indian, why did you move to the city, right? But I don't, I look at it this way too. I think that's one of the reasons why you guys too, that nature about yourself is why you were able to maneuver though. Like to be a president of a union in the city of Hamilton. Like that's later in your life, you can talk about that. But what I've seen of you, like that probably helped to give you those skills, right? Those skills to maneuver community. And that's, why you helped to build community too, right? Because we identified, like even for myself, I went to Sir John A too. I went to the old Hess Street, I went to the new Hess Street, because my mother went to the old Hess Street. And again, this is like North End stuff. If you're Indian, that's where you went. And then I went to Sir John A. And I find it so ironic to later in life, because I didn't know, Sir John A was the whole beginner of the residential school stuff, right? And they had an Indian chief as their logo. That was laughable after that. I can laugh now, but when I was in there, I'd think to myself, oh my God, what I didn't know. right? So, but anyway, I just want to go back to Marilyn here. Okay, so you grew up, so you came back to the city.
Yeah.
Okay, you came back to the city with your kids now. So what state, because when I met you when you first joined on with the health center, but that was a while ago because you were being trained, from my understanding.
Yes.
So I don't know,
Yeah.
do you want to?
When I finished my courses at Mohawk College, I got a job out at Six Nations with health services. I was what they called a community health representative, and our jobs included health promotion. We used to do water collections with the environmental health people, and one of the very different style projects that we got involved with was with Pat Mandy, who is at the time she was the vice president of patient services with Hamilton Health Sciences. She's Native, and she was involved at the time with an inquest for one of the Six Nations women that died while she was a patient in the hospital. So between Pat Mandy and Ruby Jacobs at the time, she was the director of health services at Six Nations, they developed a program whereby we would go in and do friendly visits to the different hospitals. There was one that went to Brantford, one that went to Hagersville in Simcoe, and my responsibility was to go into the hospitals in Hamilton, and we would do friendly visits, and it was all as a result of this inquest into why a Native person died while they were a patient in the hospital. So that was my introduction to the concerns and my life in the Native community in Hamilton. And I got involved with Walter Cook, who was a traditional, very loved and respected traditional healer in Hamilton. And if I was going to do visits in the hospital and someone needed to have follow-up, I would call Walter Cook. So I wanted to be more involved in the Native community in the city of Hamilton. So I became a member of Urban Native Homes. I would go to their meetings that they had, their AGMs and that, and I always wanted to be more involved with Urban Native Homes at the time. So one of the things that they gave me, a task that they gave me, was at the time that Aboriginal Health Center in Hamilton had a board of directors. And the board of directors were constituted from each of the agencies in Hamilton. So Urban Native Homes needed to have a representative on the Aboriginal Health Center board. So I was asked if I would like to be that representative. So I said, sure.
Yeah.
You know.
Can I just step in for 1 second there, Marilyn? Yeah. Fred, you were on the board too, but not as long as Marilyn.
No, nobody as long as Marilyn.
No one's. I absolutely agree. Marilyn, you have been a face in the community at different levels and helping us, and yeah, so awesome stuff. But I do want to hear Fred as to what was your role on the board then?
My role on the board was a community member at large, and there was an opening for, I think, also a police member for the board. I don't know if we actually had one that stayed on the board. but I became the president because of somebody leaving, and it was only for, what, 4 months? 4 or 5 months?
Yeah.
I didn't want it. I didn't want the president's position. So there was an election. We did get a president, but the board was very informative for me.
Okay.
It taught me a lot about the health and welfare of the Indigenous people in Hamilton.
Yeah.
So, and how they were more likely come to a health center run by Indigenous people than they were to go to a hospital.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they had doctors there. They had what do you call dentists.
There was a dentist there. Yeah.
There was a dietitian there who spoke to you about diabetes. You know, because our diabetes is a big thing within the Indigenous community, and not just here, but all over Canada. In fact, all over the world. But that was my involvement there, and like I say, community member at large, fine. She mentions what's his name? Cook, Walter Cook.
Oh, Walter Cook.
Very intelligent
Yeah.
elder. He came from, I believe it was Manitoba. He was a Cree elder. Had a very respectful career within the Native community. And, you know, if we could only get one back that has his knowledge of things. My younger brother, I believe, is still doing circles, drum circles, with the Aboriginal Health Center.
Which is the younger brother?
Loft.
I'm making you say his name.
But no, he was basically the one who got me started really into community involvement.
Okay.
Because of his involvement with NEPA. He used to take me up once you were on Concession
Street,
and he'd take me there and he'd show me all the artwork and all the photographs, and it's sort of got me started into what I call it?
Oh, what did
Convention
art. Yeah, doodling, yeah.
And what that was they give you voting cards at convention, and these ones just happen to be yellow with the word vote on it, or Cupid, whatever it was. I would doodle Native art on these cards, and I still have them at home. And I would do poetry, referencing to the type of art that I did, and that, like I say, my brother Al was instrumental in getting me up there, and then coming down into the main part of the city, going to the Friendship Center when it was on Main Street. I remember all the times that it had moved from John Street, you know, in its beginnings. Never attended those places when I was really younger on a regular basis, but it was. It would tell me, you know, like, here's a place I can go, and I know pretty near everybody. And it was very, how would I put it, important to me to learn of, let's say, John Redbird.
There's a name we haven't heard in a long time.
John Redbird was an artist.
Yes.
And a very good artist. And his brother Duke Redbird, who was a actor, writer, poet. He did poetry, and he was involved with the Native Canadian Centre of Toronto, which I was a member of, and because it was so far away, I got involved.
A little hard to get there, right?
But no, there was quite a few important people that a lot of people wouldn't recognize now their names because they're not involved anymore.
Yeah.
But if you go to Toronto and mention Duke Redbird, everybody knows Duke Redbird.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about a time like I was, again, I'm younger in that sense, maybe 10 years or so, but I remember I was a kid. When you're talking about the Friendship Center being on John Street, I was a kid going to that Friendship Center then, right? I remember my parents going there, and my father and mother taking part in arts classes. I remember my father doing paintings and selling them through the Friendship Center. But I do remember as a little girl going there. So in a way, it's like, again, small world, right? And but I'm surprised to know, though, that you didn't participate so young. It was later in life when you started to get more involved. You know, because I got used to just both of you. I see you everywhere. Like any of the events, there's Fred, there's Al, and Marilyn, you know. So there was always, in my time growing up, and again, I look at you guys as my mentors, as my leaders, right? And I was seeing you there. So I'm a little surprised that you weren't so involved when you were a kid, though. So Marilyn, going back, taking a look at your road, like, you know, once you got, because I do recall in time, you okay, so you're involved with the health center, but if I recall correctly, were you not supposed to like train under Bruce Peterkin to take over?
Yes. The health center was when it was first developed and set up, was overseen by a gentleman named Bruce Peterkin. That was a different time. That was when I first got involved with the health center. That was during the time when we had an Aboriginal doctor named Dr. Montour.
Yes.
Was
Dr.
the
Montour?
doctor there.
Yes.
And, you know, a part of me felt sorry for him. He had his misadventures and he had his arguments and conflicts with the administrators at the Aboriginal Health Center. But we were fortunate enough to have, at the time, an actual Aboriginal physician looking after Aboriginal people.
We were excited back then.
Yeah, and I think part of his problem, in my viewpoint, was we put him up on a pedestal because he was Aboriginal and he was the answer to all our needs. But he was human, you know, and unfortunately, several years later, he passed away by unfortunate circumstances, and he had his issues, but he was the first Aboriginal physician that the Aboriginal Health Center had. And it, to my understanding, is they haven't reached that ever again. They had a psychiatrist who was Aboriginal, and she's still around, Dr. Wyman. And, you know, we've had Aboriginal nurse practitioners that have come through the door, but the philosophy and the hope always had been that we would have Aboriginal doctors and nurses, and all the staff there would be Aboriginal, or a big majority of the staff would be Aboriginal. And they never really, to this day, have achieved that goal.
Yeah, I understand.
So, but continuing on, I sat on the board of the Aboriginal Health Center when it was first came to being, you know, so I saw a lot of the development, as did Fred, but also at the time, when I was going to Mohawk College, I have a cousin who called me up one day and he said, "How would you like to sit on a board of a housing place?" And I said, "Well, I'll see what I can do." So at that time, when I was first participating on Sacagawea's board of directors, was during the time when there now long-term executive director who's done wonders for Sacagawea, Melanie McCauley, was just, she was there at Sacagawea as part of a work project.
Oh, that's how she started?
Yeah, that's how she started. I forget, I can't remember right off the top of my head.
She replaced Deb Cook.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
there was
she was
before her too.
the director at that, the executive director at that time was Deborah Cook, who was the wife of Walter Cook.
Yes.
So she left, and Melanie, through a jobs program that she was with, became the executive director, and to this day, and this was in the early 1990s.
90s. So how long do you think Mel's been there?
Well, she came, I was in school, so I started the Native Community Care course in 1993, and she started just either that year or the year after that as part of Sacagawea. So she's been there well over 25 years.
Okay.
So,
okay.
and she's done amazing things.
Yes.
So,
And we'll have Mel. Mel actually is one of our
Yep.
groups, so she'll be coming and sharing her stories and
Yep.
and things like that as well.
yeah, so that was my involvement is Sacagawea, and I stayed on that committee for maybe a year on that board, but going to school and that, it was taking a lot of, and then I started working at Six Nations, and then eventually at the beginning of this the 2000s,
Yeah.
2004, I started working at the Aboriginal Health Center, and my job at the time that I was hired for was to be the assistant to the executive director, and his job was to teach me how to become, to replace him when
Yes.
he retired or
Right.
when.
But you were the one. I remember you distinctly saying, "But I'm not going away." And so I thought that was really like, "Whoa, okay, you know what you're dealing with, right?"
Yeah. I love the health center.
Yes.
I'm a
You know what?
advocate for
Yes,
the health
you are,
center.
and the programs and the women must miss you dearly there, or dearly. But I do want to go back to Fred, because Fred's sitting here listening to us here. So again, I just want to touch upon you. So to me, you both served a unique, because you were mainstream a lot, right? Mainstream's hard. It was hard back then, right, to work in mainstream and stuff like that. You worked in mainstream at the city of Hamilton. How'd you feel working there?
Well, number one, when I was, prior to that, I was driving truck through Ontario.
Yes.
And then for 9 years, I kept updating my application for the city. After 9 years, I got hired.
Took you 9 years.
It took me 9 years to get on the city. And once I got in, I was invited that same year, or 4 months later, to a Christmas party. So I got to the Christmas party and I won a case of beer, but I looked around and it was all made for men. They were all drinking, and I had a whole case of beer. I'm not drinking, and I took it home with me. So anyways, from that point on, the following year, we created, I'll say there's a group of us, we created a Christmas party for children. And it went from a small, I'd say the room was from the window to the wall, from that wall to...
It's a very small room.
It went from our members of the committee portraying Santa and their kids, their older daughters playing elves.
Okay.
So it turned out really good. Through the course of years, we ended up with how many? I can't say. Maybe 2,000 up at Carmen's Banquet
Okay.
Center.
Oh, that's a lot. 2,000
And-
kids, like families?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
And the kids all got presents. The kids all got presents. We had to bring in a new Santa because our old Santa had passed away, but it ended up a great response from kids.
So it wasn't just drinking anymore with the men.
No, no.
Did they stop or they still have
Oh,
their...
there was no drinking at the,
at the children's parties and
right,
stuff?
it's
Yeah.
children.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want kids
So
seeing
you kind of
it.
swayed a change.
Yeah, and it was very interesting to see that the members who wouldn't bring their kids to the original Christmas party ended up bringing all of their kids, right? And at the time, that was a CUPE Local 5 outside workers for the city of Hamilton. That was their big thing. And we said we have to give something back to the workers that we work with.
Yes.
And it really got off the ground. And then from that point on, I started becoming involved with the union, namely as a steward and the social committee, which that was all part of for the Christmas party. The sick committee that we went around to our sick people and those that are in the hospital, and then and brought them gifts, you know,
Okay.
and we attended to make sure that, you know, they still had friends out there.
So was that a different mode for the city workers then?
Yes, it was, because we didn't have that.
Yeah, I was going to say, my father too worked for the city at one point, and those weren't the stories I heard.
Yeah,
So
they never had, like I said, a sick committee. They never had a true social committee. They never had a social committee. What else? There was another committee that we had, a human rights committee. They never had any of that.
So do you feel you had involvement in that development?
Yes.
Is it from your cultural ways?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes. It took a few years. Going through all that, I became the vice president for, I don't know how many years. I was reelected.
Seems like a while.
And then I was elected as the president of the local, and I had there was nobody that could beat me on that. I had enough votes for the first round.
Yeah.
I got selected or elected, and from that point on, I had been involved with CUPE, which is the Canadian Union of Public Employees, becoming a member of the Human Rights Committee for Ontario Division, I did that for like 2.5 terms. Got onto the, what do you call it, the executive board of the Ontario Division. I got onto through that, we went and made motions and everything and pushed for an Aboriginal and a person of color diversity vice presidents on the national executive board.
Oh.
So I was the first, and Marie Clark, she was for the from the Black Caucus. She became the other. So we got 2, and that was in 88, I believe, 88, 89.
Wow.
And that's when I had become president for for CUPE Local 5. So we pushed with the support of, like I say, the Black Caucus and the Human Rights Committee. We finally got 2 positions on the Ontario Division Executive Board.
Mm-hmm.
So, and my friend Bill, what was it, Bill? Can't remember his last name right off the top of my head, but they wanted me to run for that position. I said, no, he's going to run. He's been here the longest, and he is Métis.
Oh, even better. Okay. Got
So,
more in. Bringing
yeah.
the people in.
So he got in, and the second time he didn't want to run. I ran and was elected, so it took me 2 years, but it was a what I would call a journey, a journey I was on to show people that Aboriginal people do matter in a union. Back in the early 80s, the union was involved with making recommendations and supporting Aboriginal groups and doing all of this and that for different communities. But they never actually had anything in their books with regards to policy until the Rainbow Committee, of which I became a part of, because in 87, at a convention, one of our Métis brothers was walking down a set of stairs and somebody let out a racial remark. So the president at the time took upon himself to create this working committee on racism, discrimination, and employment equity. Now we renamed it the Rainbow Committee after Martin Luther King's Rainbow Caucus in the States. So we had a Rainbow Committee made up of everybody. Only 3 Aboriginal people, me, Don Moran, Peter Wagner. Peter Wagner, a transplanted Mohawk who was adopted to a family in BC.
Okay.
And then the Métis, Don Moran, he was from Saskatchewan.
Oh.
So we had 3 on this committee. And with the support of the committee, this is making a long story very short, we got together and made an Aboriginal committee. There was only 3 at the time.
Yes.
There was a lot more Aboriginal people at convention, but they wouldn't self-identify. CUPE didn't have any Aboriginal or directors, Aboriginal president, whatever. They didn't have no committees set up for Aboriginal people to come to and say, you know, that they would like to be a part of this, and they didn't have any of that. And CUPE being a largest municipal workers union in Canada didn't have that. UPSU, under Fred Upshaw, had, I believe it was Fred, had an Aboriginal caucus.
Yeah.
So
Really showed them up, eh?
We learned from that.
Yeah.
And eventually we got an Aboriginal committee within the division, CUPE, and at the National Executive Board. And when I left, they had, what'd they have? 1 member from pretty near every province in Canada.
Okay.
Sometimes 2.
That were Indigenous?
That were Indigenous.
Oh, okay.
So we had a true Aboriginal
Caucus.
council.
Okay.
And I'd like to say I was part of that because I was, when we fought long and hard to get CUPE to recognize Native people. So we, right up until when I retired, I was the longest serving steward in the local. Our local 5, we then merged and became 5167, but I was still the longest serving steward. And the guys said, "You're not retiring." I went to a union meeting where somebody put a proposal up and said, Fred's retiring, that they made a recommendation, they turned it down. I couldn't retire. To this day, I'm still a steward. But,
Well, they valued you. They valued you and what you did and your accomplishments there and hard work.
yeah, well, through it all, I'll tell you, I gained a lot of knowledge within, and in education. You wouldn't believe the education that I have with regards to Aboriginal. But through the course of being the president, I was first asked to sit on the HCCI, Hamilton City Council for Civic Inclusion or something like that.
Okay.
And I was one of the original members there. Through my involvement, I also sat on the spectator community board where we would write articles all the time.
I do recall reading articles in the Spectator that you had done. I want to take it back over here now at city level to the point. Can you just tell us a little bit about the Aboriginal Advisory Committee?
The advisory committee's role is to advise the city on issues that are important to the Indigenous community, or areas that maybe the city needs to have some advice on. One of the issues that we've been dealing with this year is the spill at
Which one? Cumberland?
no,
The one right there when you're coming in on the highway.
Niagara?
Shadok Creek.
Oh,
Shadok.
Got three.
Yeah, the creek.
Shadok
Creek,
Yes.
which sewage has been, was spilling into the creek for 5 years before it was reported. And now they've been ordered by the ministry to clean it up. But there's, it's because of our nature and because of our sense of duties, and that it's the native, what would you say?
Responsibilities.
Yeah, it's
Because
our
when you talk about the
responsibility.
teachings,
Yeah,
it is our responsibility to look after Mother Earth.
yeah.
So,
Water.
and well, that falls under Mother Earth.
Yeah,
All of her.
We've been very vocal. There's now political endeavors with the Haudenosaunee Development Institute. They're involved now, but that's only one of, the different issues that are really important to the advisory committee. There's the Red Hill Valley, which, if you've been a resident of Hamilton for a long time, you know the history that's happened with the Red Hill Valley. And for myself, which lived just off of the valley, it took me 3 years before I would even take my car and drive on the Red Hill Parkway.
Oh, okay, so you're like protesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my personal protest.
I remember you were really big on this, the Discovery Center, a center that was supposed to be built there.
We wanted to have a portion of the valley dedicated to make a center, an interpretive center, or some place where we could go as Native people and do ceremonies, do interpretive, have classes.
Learn, teach,
yeah,
about the natural
anything.
environment.
And
yes.
from the beginning of my involvement with Headache, and it stood for Hamilton Executive Directors Aboriginal Coalition. And the role was to meet on a regular basis and discuss areas of interest or concern within the city of Hamilton. During the first couple months of my sitting on the committee, one of our concerns that we expressed was we wanted to have space and land dedicated allocated to our committee so that we could develop all these learning tools and place where we could bring our youth and teach them different cultural stuff. But it never materialized.
How long ago do you feel that was put out there to the city? Like this message you're saying, we need a space, we need land. How long ago do you?
Well, as recent as in the spring, I mentioned to someone in the city that Red Hill Valley School was on Albright.
Okay, yeah.
and that school wasn't being used anymore. So where it was situated was, you go down one road, one little street, and you would have access to the Red Hill Valley. It was on a street at Mount Albion Road in Albright, and buses would go right there. And the school was just big enough where I felt, and others on the committee felt, that it would be just so suitable for us to have our interpretives,
Yes,
our own space. It was just big enough. No, it was sold to developers, and the school isn't there anymore, and they're going to build condos on that piece of land. So for at least 15 years since my involvement in the community, we've wanted to have land dedicated, allocated to us, but the city developed two spots. One was the Bear Paw, where we had a little bit of land. It's part of the Red Hill Valley, but I think now it's overseen by the Royal Botanical Gardens. It was allocated a spot where we could go and sit there and, you know,
Meditate.
Pardon?
Meditate.
Meditate? Well, it wasn't a big enough, well, there was space to meditate, and there is another space down closer to the lakefront that was supposed to be another area that we could have as our own. But it's not a building where we can, or it's not a piece of land where we could build on. Because
is it big enough to hold a powwow?
No, no.
Okay, no good to me.
No.
Yeah.
So, but I've been on a part of the Indigenous Advisory Committee now for close to 10 years. So hopefully in our new recruitment, and I promise to help, the Urban Indigenous Strategy was formed during my time on the committee, and we're partnering. We're kind of meshed together in a partnership, and they've been doing some stuff working with Six Nations in developing projects. They have their own people there that if you talk to them, they could tell you exactly all the stuff that they've been doing in trying to develop awareness in the city and to develop partnerships with Six Nations and other areas.
That's that strategy, Shelley Hill.
Urban Indigenous Strategy. Shelley Hill.
Shelley Hill was,
and Beth Dockstader works there.
And then I know before all that too, that's when Shiloh came into play when she was doing the research. So, but I know what were the three main things: land, community, and culture. I think like from the strategy itself, which is comparable to what, from CHIL, from this research we've been doing through, we just did 5-year visioning. And those were the 3 items that was identified to us, is that we need to have a place for our people that can come together and we don't get kicked out, because that has happened. We also need, because our people, our community, that is something very strong. Land. We want land, because for the over 33 years I had done like the powwows. And I came across times where it was hard to get land or to get the space, or you get kicked out of the space because somebody else is going to have it, right? It's, that has been, so land, that was the second one. And then what did I say, the other one? Culture. We want our culture back, in the sense that you take a look, like we talked a little bit, tiny bits, we haven't gotten into the big discussion, residential school, day school. And those effects that had on our older people, right? Even the younger people like myself. I'm not that young, but still it had an effect on me. So we just want back what we had. But one thing I'd like to ask you guys is, you know, and you know, kind of winding down here, what message do you want to give to the people of the future, like to the people who might be looking at this? Because I hate to say, we're not getting any younger. We're kind of going on the other side. So, you know, all our time here on land, on Mother Earth is a blessing. But what would you like to leave as your legacy? What do you want to tell the people? You know, you got grandchildren, right? You got grandchildren. Yes. What do you want? What message do you want to leave them? What do you want to leave them?
I want to leave mine the history of their people. Like I said, my father was at residential school. Now, I want to leave that. I want to also leave that my great-great-grandfather, Frederick Ogilvie Loft, was instrumental in creating the League of Indians, which eventually morphed into the Assembly of First Nations. Now, here's a history. I want to go all the way back to when his great-grandfather, who had a name this long and then got it shortened to Loft, you know, I want them to understand what it took to get this far and why it's taken that long to get here.
Yeah. So thank you, Fred, for sharing. I want to see Marilyn's side of what she wants to. You don't mind? Again, we're coming to a time of winding up, and what would you like to leave your legacy? What do you want to leave for your grandchildren? What are your hopes and desires for the future?
I want them to carry on the cause.
When you say them, you mean your children, your grandchildren?
My children, grandchildren, the community. We're caregivers and caretakers of this earth.
Yes.
You know, we've been given a responsibility to leave it better than what we found it.
Okay. Again, thank you very much. Kind of winding up here, all right? And really, I respect both of you very much so, like I said. What you have done, I'm going to get emotional.
but we just followed your lead in a lot of things. So
again, I honor, and I'm honored that both of you came and sharing this talk. And again, we will have that other opportunity in March, and we'll have more people in the room to hash it out and talk. And you know, you never know, maybe we might be able to leave that good legacy where those young people will take over for us.
I like it when she gets excited.
Oh, I know.
But there's been people in our community who throughout the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, that have repeatedly and have continuously worked to promote ourselves, to let the non-natives and the natives who haven't been fortunate enough to be working with people like Yvonne and the other people at Chill and those who've been the pioneers of our community and of our culture, and to say thank you, you know, for what you've done, what you've promoted, the fight that you've...
You're talking about me now.
Yes, I am talking about you, you know, and who deserve our respect and deserve...
You're going to make me cry. You keep talking like that.
No.
You're going to make me cry, but
you've been around a long time, you know, and it's without people like you and you who have promoted different activities that have encouraged us to get involved in. You know, there's some things that I wouldn't have even thought of participating in if it hadn't have been you're out there promoting and working hard in the community that's not your primary base anymore, but you're still back here.
It's been hard, and I miss you guys. That's why when I do come here, Kurt just listens. He says, every time you're talking to us, you're just laughing and carrying on and loud, and because he hears me in my bedroom, because that's where my office is, right? Yeah. And it's like, but I miss these guys. Yeah. And I haven't been able to talk to them in a while, so you're going to hear a lot of that. Okay, thank you very much for coming. I'd like to thank my both guests here, Marilyn and Fred. I really enjoyed this talk, especially from the older, seasoned crew of people. But I have respect for both of you, high respect. These are movers and shakers in our community, and I'm very fortunate to have mentored and learned underneath these two. So again, thank you very much for coming to this session.